Hi guys, and welcome to my very first coding guide. So what I'm gonna talk about today are React hooks, what you need them for, how they actually work, and how you can use them in a practical way. Also, I'm going to speak in the future about way more topics like Python, backend development, front-end development, Supabase, and in general SaaS opportunities. So stay tuned.
All right, guys, let's crack right into it, and let's start by clarifying what a custom hook actually is. So it's a way to extract some logic out of our component to make it more overviewable and more reusable in the future. So I brought a very simple example here. This is just a plain React project, and you can see it's just a button where some text gets mounted and unmounted. So this isn't a complete beginner tutorial. I will be going more into beginner topics in the future, but you already should have some basic knowledge of Reactor here. So we have our use state variable. It's open, and we just hook into the state. And then we have our very simple toggle function here, where when we call it, it just sets the opposite value of what is being set right now. So if this is true and you call it, then it gets set to false and vice versa. So we can make our custom hook right here to reduce these two lines to one, but don't get confused by it, because in the future you have way more lines. You have like 100 lines of code, and I also will be showing you an example later in this video from my own projects. But to start very simple, we have like 2 lines here right now, and let's start reducing them to 1. And we do this by writing a custom hook. And what's important to know, that custom hooks usually start with use. So the name of the hook is like use state, and then we make our own custom hook here, and we call it use toggle. So that we use something. So we make the function, and then initial value, we make a parameter, and then we start very simple, and and we make also a new state variable, and we just call it value and fill it with initial value. And then we also write again a function that we will giving back in the return. So it's then we make set value, and then we just set it to the opposite value. And now we will be returning an array. So we have the value here and the toggle function here. So what this is doing, you will understand it way better in a second. And we say at the first return value, or index 0, there should be always given back the value, and always at the second, or index 1, the toggle function. So what we can do now is delete this. Then we say, we make the array, and we call it is menu open, and then say toggle menu, and call our function. And then we change this here. Okay, perfect. Yeah, note we get a type error right here because it's TSX, but don't worry about it. This is not important for the video right now. And what we did here is like we set another variable name. So it's like is menu open, but the name doesn't have to be exactly the same. But we will in the next feature, or in the next example, we will be seeing this when we return an object. For example, the name is very important, but at an array it doesn't matter, because it recognizes, okay, this is the value, and the value is just a boolean here that is being returned, and then the function. And we can also say, okay, toggle menu, that we can rename this, and it's way simpler if we would use this, for example, another component, and we say like not is menu open, we say is sidebar open, and that's also way better for us to see it. And we can go here and see it works perfectly fine. Okay guys, the next example I brought you is a very simple counter. So I prepared already a component and I will just be explaining it. And I've added here right now, and we can see it's a very simple counter where we can add values and subtract values again and then reset it to the base. So, and if we go into it, we see it's also pretty direct and pretty simple. We just make a counter variable here, and then we make 3 functions where we add a value with 1, subtract 1, and we can also reset it to the initial value again. And also we return this time an object. So this is very important to understand for you. If you, for example, we return the count here, and now the name does matter. So if we return the count here, we can also make it on the 2nd position, and it doesn't make any difference. Also, if we put it again to the 1st position, then it's working perfectly fine. But here the names do matter, and that's very important for you to know. Also, I mean, it's typically if you have like more values that you return, it's better if it's an object. And if it's like some helper hooks, for example, a custom use debounce or a use toggle the way we did it before, then it's very good that we only return an array. And you see here, we could write this logic here, but we have now only 1 line. So before, when we would write the code here, it would be way too big. And if you also want to reuse it, we also have to again write this code, but only if we import it right now, it's only 1 line, and we can also customize it. So here at the parameter, it's like base to 0, but we can also set it to 10, for example. And then if we reload it, yes, we get 10 at the initial value. And if we reset it, then it goes back to 10. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But really important that you get like more examples to see that you can only make this logic in 1 line. And now at the next example, we will be going into code of one of my own projects. It's more complicated, but don't be intimidated by this. It doesn't matter. It's only that you get the basic understanding of it. So it's like a way bigger component, but the important thing is I made a use bulk action here. This is separated, custom hook separated into a different file. And what we see here is like there are a lot of values and functions that we handle here. So if we go into it, we see, for example, there's like a lot of logic. There's no UI returning. This is only the logic, and we return it at the end with an object. So you see pretty good that we would write normally we would have to write all this code in this area, but we just save it and then we can import it. And if we have, this is obviously for a list to like remove and add certain things. And if we have more lists, then we save ourselves a lot of code. This has like, I don't know, 100, almost 100 lines. And we can just reduce it to 10 in the component then. And we just have to import it to other lists, for example. We just have to import this and get the same functionality as well. So yeah, I think this is a really good example. Don't be intimidated by it right now. If you see like some TypeScript and stuff like this, we will be going into this in the future way more deeply. Okay, and now the last thing I brought you is an API call. Also, it looks a little bit more complicated, but also don't be intimidated by it. It's just, the important thing is just this line of code here. So this is a super base API call, but you don't need to understand it for now. This is the only important line, and you see how we can use it, for example. So this also uses regquery. Maybe you are familiar with it, and what it looks at the end of the day is like we just make is loading and error, and then we make use fetch clients. So we can use the return values here. It's just data if the request is loading and an error, and everything we reduced to one line of code. So If the code gets mounted, then we get it starts calling the API, and then we get at the end of the day, like we get back data, or if it's loading, and then we can handle the states in our UI component here pretty well. So if we want to say, for example, if it's loading, then we can do this, and then we make is loading, and then we say like loading component. Then we can render a loading component here, for example. But of course, it doesn't work right now because it doesn't exist. But you see what I mean. You see what I'm getting to. We only have this one line right now and save ourselves all this code, like 50 lines, and it would seem way more complicated. And we also have a little bit of separation of concerns, because everything gets way more clean and you have a way better overview at everything, and you can reuse it also way better. So if I have another component where I also need to fetch the clients, for example, I just have to make this one line and I get access to the data, to the is loading, to the error, everything I need basically, without having to write all this code. So I hope it's very clear. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. And also stay tuned for the future. I want to be publishing a lot more React Native and Python videos. And yeah, stay tuned. I'm excited about it. Thank you very much for watching the video.